Welcome to The Debate. Today, we are staring down the barrel of a number that looks pretty benign on a spreadsheet, but might actually be one of the most dangerous statistics in human history. 2.25.
That's the global total fertility rate, the TFR.
Exactly. And we are sitting at the precipice of really a demographic cliff, and all the momentum is carrying us right over the edge. But on the other side of that falling line, you have this cultural counterinsurgency, and it's led by perhaps the most polarizing figure of our time.
It really is a collision of hard math and, let's be honest, massive ego. You have the demographic data showing a global contraction, and then you have Elon Musk, who's now a father of 14 children with 4 different women, effectively declaring himself a kind of new Abraham. And he's arguing that if we don't radically change our reproductive habits, civilization just ceases to be.
And that right there sets the stage for the core question we need to dissect today. Is this aggressive pronatalism, exemplified by Musk's secular dynasty and echoed by religious traditionalists, is it a necessary mission to save humanity from an extinction trajectory? Or is this entire collapse narrative just alarmist hyperbole that ignores the complex economic realities regular people face?
I fall firmly in the camp that the alarmism is overstated. I think we need to ask if we are actually looking at a catastrophe or if we're just witnessing a very painful, maybe very necessary stabilization. But I know you view the math a little differently.
I do, because the math, it doesn't really care about our optimism. Let's just define the terms so we are all on the same page. The replacement level, this is the gold standard for a stable population, it's 2.1 children per woman. You need 2 to replace the parents, and that little 0.1 covers mortality before reproductive age. If a society is below 2.1 for long enough, it's mathematically fading away. It's simple compound interest, but in reverse.
And globally, we're at 2.25, he said. So technically, we're still just above WAR.
Barely. And the trend line is steep. But that global average it's misleading. It hides the absolute cratering of the developed world. As of 2026, the United States is at a record low of 1.6. That's a shrinking future. But look at East Asia. South Korea has hit 0.7. China's seen 4 consecutive years of absolute population decline. These aren't just statistical dips. They represent a structural collapse of the next generation. A TFR of 0.7 means the next generation is less than half the size of the current one.
I will grant you that the numbers in East Asia are startling. 0.7 in South Korea it's unprecedented in peacetime history.
It's unprecedented in human history, period. And this is where Musk's philosophy gains traction. He simplifies the problem. No humans equals no humanity. He frames this as a binary choice between expansionist philosophies, civilizations that want to go to Mars, that want to grow, and extinctionist ones. His argument is that without a conscious, mission-driven effort to repopulate cultures like Japan or Poland or Italy, they effectively cease to exist as functional societies within a century. He views reproduction not as a lifestyle choice, but as a duty to maintain the light of consciousness.
See, that is exactly where the argument shifts from demographics to ideology, and that's where I get off the train. I look at the same chart and I see a different story. Yes, fertility is dropping, but the global population is still growing. We're projected to peak around mid-century at about 10.3 billion people. So the idea that the species is going extinct is simply not true.
But the innovation engines of the species are shrinking. The growth is almost entirely concentrated in sub-Saharan Africa. The places that have driven the global economy for the last century are aging out.
True, but we have to look at why those rates are falling. This isn't a plague. It's not a result of war. It's a result of success. It comes from women's education, massive increases in workforce participation, access to contraception, the shift away from agrarian labor where kids were free farm hands. These are victories for human rights and autonomy. My issue with the Muskian panic is that it implicitly treats these freedoms as problems to be solved. And frankly, Musk himself is a terrible model for how to solve this.
In what way? I mean, he's putting his money and his biology where his mouth is.
He has 14 children, yes, But let's be real about how he achieved that. He's the wealthiest man on the planet. He utilizes surrogacy and IVF with multiple partners, Siobhan Zillis, Grimes, his first wife. That is an edge case of extreme wealth and unconventional relationships. He can outsource the chaos to nannies and staff. That's not a scalable model for a family in Seoul or New York facing the urbanization penalty.
Can you just clarify that, the urbanization penalty? I think that's a crucial concept here.
It's the simple economic fact that on a farm, a child is an asset, labor. In a city, a child is a liability, a massive cost. Space in cities is expensive. You physically cannot fit 14 kids in a modern apartment in Tokyo or Manhattan. So unless Musk is suggesting we all move back to the countryside, which contradicts his own tech-centric industrialism, he's selling a philosophy that the housing market physically cannot support.
I think you're taking his personal life too literally as a blueprint. Musk isn't suggesting everyone go hire a surrogate. He's highlighting a cultural mindset. He frequently notes that prosperity causes rates to plummet. And the data backs him up. Historically, the wealthier a society gets, the fewer kids they have. This suggests the barrier isn't just money, it's value systems. If money fixed it, the rich would have the most kids. They usually have the least, Musk being the clear anomaly.
But is he an anomaly or is he trying to start a movement?
Both. And this leads us to the first core pillar of this debate, the concept of the new Abraham.
A title he has, jokingly accepted.
He joked, "I have many children, just like the patriarch Abraham." But strip away the ego and look at the sociology. The only groups currently beating that 2.1 replacement rate are religious ones. The data for 2026 is crystal clear. Muslims globally are averaging between 2.9 and 3.1. Orthodox and Haredi Jews are often between 6 and 7. The Amish in North America, 6 to 7.
While secular Buddhists are at 1.6.
And the secular West is even lower in many pockets. Look, Musk identifies as a cultural Christian, not because he believes Jesus rose from the dead, but because he believes in the function of the belief. He views the imperative to be fruitful and multiply as necessary survival software for a civilization. When you see him naming children technomechanicus or XAAXI, he is trying to build a secular version of the quiverful movement.
Quiverful being the fundamentalist Christian idea that large families are a weapon for God?
Exactly. Families like the Collins or the Church family, who have 11 or more children, do it because they believe they are populating God's army. Musk is doing the exact same thing, but his faith is in the survival of the species and the colonization of Mars. He's trying to engineer a culture that values legacy over leisure. He wants to make having a large family a status symbol again, rather than a sign of being uneducated or poor.
I just find that comparison incredibly fragile. The whole new Abraham idea collapses when you look at the mechanism. Abraham and the Amish and the Haredi, they rely on thick, insular community structures. In those communities, women often stay home, the community shares the childcare burden, neighbors help raise neighbors' kids, and the expectations are uniform. Musk relies on paid help and technology. He is a utilitarian.
Does the mechanism matter if the result is biological continuity?
It matters entirely because you cannot export Musk's model to the general public. You cannot simply inject cultural Christianity into a secular population and expect birth rates to jump. Look at the data again. Christian birth rates in Europe and North America are stagnant. They track almost exactly with their secular neighbors. The religious advantage you cite is specific to high-commitment, often isolated communities. You can't just tweet people into having a religious conviction they don't feel.
I disagree that you can't shift the culture. You don't need to be Amish to believe the future matters. Musk is trying to shift the Overton window of what's considered virtuous. Right now, our culture signals that having children is a burden, a carbon footprint, or a career killer. We treat children as an obstacle to self-actualization. Musk, along with these other large families like the Bretts in Scotland or the Delamotts, are trying to reframe children as a creative act, the ultimate startup.
But ideology runs into a brick wall when it meets the bank account. You can talk about creative acts all you want, but if a young couple cannot afford a 2-bedroom apartment, they aren't going to have 3 kids. And this brings us to the second pillar of our debate, policy, because the pronatalists always pivot to this idea that we just need to support families more.
Well, don't we?
We do. But not because it fixes the birth rate. I know you're going to tell me financial incentives don't work, but let me just give you the numbers because they are staggering.
Go ahead.
Look at South Korea again. They viewed the 0.7 rate as a national emergency. They spent $270 billion, billion with the B, over 16 years trying to boost their birth rate. They threw everything at it. Monthly allowances, birth grants, subsidized daycare, priority housing.
And the result was the 0.7 rate we just mentioned. It went down, not up.
Exactly. The lowest in the world. It failed catastrophically. Or take Hungary. They're the absolute poster child for the conservative pro-natalist movement. They spend nearly 5% of their GDP on family benefits, tax exemptions for mothers of 4, zero-interest baby loans that get forgiven if you reproduce enough. They've made it their national mission.
And their TFR is roughly 1.39.
It barely moved the needle. It stopped the bleeding slightly, perhaps, but it did not reverse the trend. Even here in the U.S., with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act under the Trump administration, we saw these $1,000 Trump accounts for babies born between 2025 and 2028. Does anyone really think $1,000 locked away until age 18 is going to convince a woman to derail her career for a third child? It's laughable. These are Band-Aids on a severed artery.
I actually agree with you that throwing cash at the problem is insufficient. But I would argue that the failure of these policies actually proves my previous point. Culture is the necessity. You mentioned Hungary, but let's look at France. France has sustained a fertility rate higher than its neighbors for decades, closer to 1.8. Why?
It's still below replacement.
But it's significantly higher than Italy or Germany. And the difference is that France offers cultural support alongside the money. It's not just a check in the mail. It's a long-standing system. They have new proposals for baby leave, 4 months partially paid for both parents. But more importantly, French culture doesn't view motherhood as the end of womanhood. It's a society that expects people to have children. Musk is right when he says money alone doesn't fix it. If prosperity caused children, we'd have a baby boom in Silicon Valley. Instead, we have a baby bust. The solution has to be ideological. You have to value the child as a duty or a legacy, not just a tax write-off.
I interpret France's success differently. I think France succeeds because it has a robust state infrastructure that allows women to work and have children. It reduces the opportunity cost. It's not about duty, it's about logistics. The reason Musk's prosperity causes rates to plummet theory holds true generally is that in wealthy societies, children become economically useless but emotionally priceless. They turn into expensive luxuries.
Expensive luxuries. That phrase perfectly encapsulates the mindset Musk is fighting. He wants children to be viewed as the foundation of civilization, not a luxury good like a yacht that you buy if you have extra cash.
But we cannot wish away the economic structure of the modern world, unless we're suggesting a mass deurbanization, which creates its own economic collapse. We have a structural conflict that cultural Christianity cannot solve. You can't pray away the price per square foot in London or Shanghai.
Then what's the alternative? Because if we accept your structural determinism that cities equal sterility, we are accepting the consequences of collapse. And I want to paint that picture clearly for our listeners, because collapse sounds abstract. It sounds like something from a movie.
Go ahead. What does the collapse look like?
We're talking about the 2026 reality where Japan is losing 1 million people annually. That is a city the size of San Jose vanishing every single year. Europe's workforce is shrinking, which threatens the very pension systems and healthcare systems we rely on. Who pays for the healthcare of the 80-year-olds when the working-age population has been cut in half? It's a Ponzi scheme running out of new investors.
That's the demographic crunch, yes. I don't deny the fiscal pain.
It's more than a crunch. Innovation slows down when the population ages. Venture capital dries up. Musk warned that Europe will not be Europe much longer without domestic birth increases. He views immigration as a patch, not a fix, especially since migrants often adopt the low fertility norms of their host countries within a single generation. If we don't turn this around, we face a gerontocracy, a world of the old, by the old, for the old. A world of walkers, not strollers.
I think that's a very powerful, very scary story, but I don't buy the catastrophe framing entirely. Yes, the pension math is hard, but let's nuance this. A smaller population might actually improve quality of life in many ways. Less strain on housing markets, less strain on natural resources and the environment, potentially higher wages for labor because workers are scarce.
That is a dangerous gamble. A shrinking population is a less dynamic one. It's a dying patient, not a resting one.
But there's a massive difference between stabilizing and collapsing. South Korea isn't stabilizing, it's evaporating. You can automate a factory arm, but you cannot automate the consumption, the creativity, and the human spark that drives an economy. Robots don't buy houses or start businesses. They don't create culture.
But we also can't force women back into the kitchen to save the GDP. That is the subtext of a lot of this pro-natalist rhetoric. South Korea is an extreme example of work culture gone wrong. Long hours, intense pressure. But look at the Brett family in Scotland, 13 children. They focus on routine, organization, discipline. That works for them. But as a society, we should focus on the well-being of the children who are actually born, ensuring they have resources in education rather than obsessing over the aggregate number.
It's not about forcing women into roles. It's about elevating the role of the parent to something heroic. You mentioned the Bretts. Their life is organized, yes, but it is also purposeful. The collapse narrative isn't just about labor, it's about the loss of dynamism. A society with no children is a society with no future orientation. It becomes nostalgic and stagnant. That is what Musk means by extinctionist. It's a psychological state as much as a biological one.
And I would argue that adaptationist is the middle ground you're missing. We adapt our economies, we use AI to fill the gaps, we accept that the 1950s demographics are gone and they aren't coming back. We redesign our pension systems so they aren't Ponzi schemes reliant on endless growth.
I see why you want to believe that, but let me give you a final perspective on adaptation. Adaptation implies we survive the transition. But if the TFR stays at 1.0 or lower, there is no transition. There's just a slow fade. The math is relentless. If every generation is half the size of the one before it, it doesn't take long to become irrelevant.
Which brings us back to the new Abraham. Is the solution really to have 14 kids?
The solution might be to applaud those who do, rather than mock them, to create a culture where that's seen as a valid, high-status path, equal to becoming a CEO.
I think we have to be realistic. The new Abraham relies on a level of resources, financial, medical, and psychological, that 99.9% of the human race does not possess. We can admire the commitment, but we cannot mandate the methodology. Musk is an outlier, not an archetype.
We're reaching the end of our time, and the divide here is clear.
It is. I'll summarize my position this way. The demographic shift is real, and the numbers are down. But the crisis framing is a choice. We cannot and should not try to force society back into a structure that no longer exists. We can't expect everyone to emulate Musk's 14-child family or the strict religious mandates of the Haredi. The future lies in adapting our systems to a replacement level of perhaps 1.6 or 1.8, utilizing technology to fill the gaps, not chasing an impossible 2.1 through fear or cash handouts. We need to focus on the quality of life for the living.
And I will conclude with this. Civilization is fragile. We assume it will continue because it always has. But the data suggest we are walking off a cliff. Whether it is through the religious zeal of the Collins family or the Mars colonizing zeal of Elon Musk, humanity requires a biological feature. If the cultural Christian framework or a new pronatalist ethos is the only thing keeping the birth rate afloat, it may be the necessary software for our survival. We cannot adapt to zero.
An open question for the ages.
Indeed, we leave it to you, the listener, to decide if you are an expansionist or an adapter. There is much more in the source material regarding specific global data and family case studies.
Thank you for joining the debate.
Until next time.